Diana Niksatras from the Product Development Officer at NAB, my favourite bank because it is my bank, and Daniel Knight, partner at K&L Gates, is going to be our moderator, having raced across from doing a roundtable. Well done, mate. I'm so glad you could do that sprint. Thanks, Diana. Grab your seats. You know what you look like, so you just have to pick. Diana, you're going to move along a couple.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. There you go. Now everyone knows who you are. Otherwise, they would have been confused.
Fantastic.
Called you Adam. Over to you guys. Give them a big hand.
Great, thank you very much. Great to be here, and thanks everyone for jumping into this session. Really looking forward to this discussion. We thought cage match, but we'll just do it as a panel discussion instead. Great to talk about this topic. Obviously, card payments evolve so rapidly in this country over many years. Contactless, tap and go payments, been rapid uptake in Australia, perhaps more rapid than any other place in the world. So it'd be great to unpack some of those developments, as well as what's happening in PayByBank, the ability to make payments instantly from bank accounts in lots of settings. So looking forward to that discussion. Great panelists, great group of panelists that I'm joined by today. Really looking forward to hearing from you all. I might start by just letting you do a brief introduction. So Diana.
Hi everyone, great to be here. Thank you, Simon. That was an excellent pronunciation of my surname, Diana Niksatras. I work in the go-to-market team, looking at ways to grow and increase adoption and awareness of new propositions.
Great.
Over to you,
Trent.
That's a surname I also never try to pronounce. So to me, you're D. Yeah, with Azupay, we're a real-time payments leader in the account-to-account space. So we provide NPP solutions, PayID, PayTo, and payout for a range of industries from banking through to retail to airlines to wagering and you name it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Dan. Adam Reid, I work with Linkley. We are a pretty core technology platform powering a lot of the card-present retail face-to-face payments in Australia. We interface to most of the acquirers and all the point-of-sale services.
Fantastic, thank you. And so we might start with you, Adam. I'm interested, we talked at the beginning about transformation in card payments, the developments that we're seeing all around us. Where are we headed, do you think? What's some next innovations?
Oh, look, the rate of innovation in card payments has really, for the last 15 years, probably the time that I've been in the industry, has increased quite exponentially. I think you could probably almost trace it back to the moment that contactless came into the market, and Australia had such a high take-up of that. Since then, you've seen the introduction of things like buy now, pay laters and QR codes, wearables, digital wallets, Asian payment types like Alipay and WeChat Pay. It feels like every year something new is coming in, and this market seems to take it up quite regularly. So technology plays a very important part in that. The technology rails connecting to the financial rails is as important as ever.
Yeah, fantastic. And so in that landscape, I mean, the RBA obviously running their consultation process at the moment around what they might do on surcharging, interchange and so on. Interested in thoughts from you about, perhaps from you, Trent, to start with, about what impact that might have on decisions that consumers make, or perhaps more likely on decisions that merchants make.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, the surcharge conversation's been going around for quite a long time. I remember I think it was about 2016 when the last round was, and we capped surcharging and cost of processing. And with that change itself created a ripple in the industry for how companies can manage around that restructure of their process. And when you look at surcharging today, the whole point of surcharging has been a lever to signal cost of processing to make consumers able to make that choice. If they want the rewards from the high-level points card, go for it. If they don't want to pay the fee, they just want to use their bank account for a debit card, that's perfect. So taking away the surcharge and taking away a signal, it could be interesting to see what happens from a consumer point of view. Although organically there has generally been a shift away from credit and more to debit, people using their own funds. What we will see, I think, from a merchant's point of view, though, when they're losing that ability to recoup those costs of processing, is they will start to preference or nudge their payers to use a lower cost process. So hopefully we see PayByBank becomes a prominent first feature for a payment option rather than down the list somewhere.
Yeah, great. And so PayByBank obviously presents that lower cost option more in an online context at the moment than in physical stores, but we might unpack that a little bit as we go. But from your perspective, Diana, at NAB, what are you seeing in terms of the opportunities that PayByBank options offer? Yeah.
Sure, and I think if we take a step back in terms of PayByBank more broadly, so talking about account to account, there's obviously been a lot of technology advances, especially with the release of NPP. You know, you've got faster payments, real time, always on, simple addressing with PayID itself, and the whole concept of security using not only your PayID but going through your banking app to authorise and view mandates. So I think from a PayByBank perspective more broadly, the basis of NPP allows a great foundation for then building capability, and we see that with PayTo. I think the recent-ish introduction of PayTo has really unlocked a number of different use cases. And I think to your point made earlier, Adam, you know, the meeting of that technology and digital capability, particularly in that account-to-account space, has seen a number of different use cases really, you know, come to life. And at NAB, we launched PayTo with a non-bank financial institution, and it was all around an additional payment alternative, not only to, you know, BEX or based payments, but also around, you know, that real-time nature in terms of being able to redraw funds. The other use case where that is very relevant is in retail. So Amazon launched PayTo earlier this year, which is fantastic. I would highly recommend those who haven't yet go onto Amazon and have a look at that experience, and looking at PayTo as an alternative to credit cards. You know, it's a very elegant experience that has been built, and I think, you know, it really does lend itself to an alternative to, you know, the card payments. Not better or worse, but I'll get to that later. But I think, you know, in terms of unlocking the opportunity and, to your point earlier, providing more choice and options for users and customers. Also, I think, you know, the extension of that payment experience to refunds as well. So being able to you know, request and receive a refund has also added to the overall sort of payment experience and really helped, you know, elevate account to account more broadly.
Great, thanks, Diana. And thanks for setting the scene too there on how this all fits in with NPP and the various payment options. You mentioned PayID. I know, Trent, that's something that's close to your heart and the sort of product set that you're rolling out at Azupay. Can you talk to us about what you're seeing as sort of getting traction in the market? Yeah, definitely. I mean, looking at the PayByBank options, be that PayID and PayTo, you know, PayID was launched initially as a peer-to-peer payment mechanism. The whole point of it was for easy portability of your bank account. You have to remember bank details, just know your mobile number. You know, about 6 years ago, Azupay launched with our PayID solution, the dynamic PayID. And that provided for an e-com ready solution. Our first transaction was actually B2B for a government transaction. And we've rolled out since then, and what we've seen in markets from telco through to airlines and travel, through to wagering, etc., is a strong take-up of PayID, especially when we look at the mapping between the 100+ organisations that are utilising our dynamic solution, seeing the mapping of customers that are using PayID across multiple different companies as well. It's a very prominent channel. Australia was very, I guess, in the A2A space, the real-time payment space, we were a bit late to the party to start the journey, but our adoption curve is on par and ahead of some of the international markets that went before us as well. So we're seeing that across the whole range with PayID and PayTo. We launched with PayTo about 2.5 years ago when it first came out, and we had some small telcos and some money remitters and so forth using it, and quite a good, smooth experience for those customers as well. Yeah, great. And I suppose when PayTo and PayID, when they're launching, the framing has been PayID is allowing consumer push, whereas PayTo allows merchant pull. Is that still the way to think about it? Yeah, that's definitely the case. In a way, we look at it as being convenience over control, and trust plays into it. So that's a piece where consumers still are very much, especially Australians, trust is a big thing when it comes to payments. And probably the one hesitance that some Aussies will have about using PayTo is the concept of giving an agreement to access my bank account, to pull funds out. That's why direct debit isn't as prevalent as, say, people using their credit card for recurring payments, because they've got less control over it.
they like the control of a push. When they're in control, they tend to use their own funds more than they've been pulled.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, it would be interesting to see that dynamic play out as these tools evolve and the ability to manage mandates as well. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think the use of PayID in PayTo, we see that there is actually a high usage of using your PayID to create a PayTo mandate as opposed to BSB account number. And I think, that really touches the point about security and confidence and, not potentially providing more information than necessary for instance, your card details. So, your PayIDs, your phone number, your email address, which generally you have to provide anyway. So using that as a way to then facilitate the PayTo agreement. We've seen that quite popular based on the various use cases that have been introduced.
Yeah, great, thank you. And in terms of the user experience, I mean, paying using cards is something that we're all familiar with. In an online scenario, the checkout flow can be pretty smooth. Interested in thoughts from the panel about what role PayByBank can play in that context, in an online context. Can the flow be as smooth? Can it be as simple? Can it be as user-friendly?
Yeah,
perhaps start with you.
I'll go first. Yes, definitely. And I think if you guys were expecting a bit of a punch on in terms of, card versus bank, maybe later after the session, but I think definitely in terms of, the capability around digital enablement, with PayTo, there's that one-time setup of authorisation. The great thing about how Australia set up PayTo is it can be a reoccurring authorisation. So you're not having to come back and authorise the payment each and every time you want to check out or make a purchase. So there is definitely the opportunity, and we've seen in the Netherlands, for instance, take-up rates of account to account at over 70%. So definitely and definitely opportunity to grow and be a popular choice alongside cards.
Yeah, Trent.
Yeah, definitely, and we're seeing it as well that having that smooth experience, a smooth, consistent experience, the consumers will recognise from merchant to merchant, from platform to platform. They know what it is, they know how to use it. It's ubiquitous for them. And that's what's been so successful, that kind of take up across multiple industries. I think as well, then it kind of blurs into, and then I guess the next conversation is, what does that mean for physical retail? And I guess that's where Linkley's going to have a good view on that one as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think in the face-to-face space or in-store retail, I'd agree. I think PayByBank is an and, not an or. It will certainly have a role to play. And as I touched on before, I think it's really down to the technology sector to introduce that and make it frictionless and accessible. I think we've sort of touched on the friction of the user, the consumer, getting their mandate and setting that up at the point of sale. We've also got to think about what is the interface back into the retailer or back into the merchant. These payments, these transactions don't just exist in a vacuum. They have to be integrated back into the retailer's back-end systems, so their point of sale, their ERP systems. There's a really important role for technology to play. Linkley is quite experienced in making that technology appropriate for the retail sector, and we've had a lot of conversations thus far even with people like Trent and some of the banks about this. So we're keen to see how this plays out. I totally agree it's an and, not an or, and the high rate of take-up of payments innovation in Australia suggests that the community will get on board. So you've really got to answer the question. I think the largest retailers in Australia could do this in a proof of concept type fashion, but how's it then going to trickle down to the mid-market and the SME, and that's where technology comes into it.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm interested in diving into that user experience a bit more in a retail context. So I guess, where are you seeing the opportunities? Is it in the low value, one-off incidental purchases, or is it more about a loyalty engagement or about large value transactions? Where are you seeing opportunities?
Yeah, look, I'd be interested to hear Trent's perspective because it hasn't really had great take-up in retail at the moment, but I would imagine there are things that merchants or large enterprise retailers could do to affect consumer behaviour in that way. Certain types of purchases that they would prefer to be paid by bank rather than card. That's all to play out, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think to your point about how retailers and merchants will try and influence the payment type, Amazon's a great experience. A great example. Amazon promoting PayTo on a higher basket size because of the lower cost of processing for them. Right. So we will see more of that happen where merchants will influence based on what's going to be better for their organisation. I guess the reason for the low take-up in retail so far has been the technology hasn't been rolled out to make it work.
Yeah. And that's where we come in.
Exactly. And us too. But what we have seen though, I think it's probably over the last 6 months, I've seen a lot of questions from market, from large retailers, from payments companies, infrastructure providers saying, how can we bring account to account into retail? So it is about finding that solution or building that solution. Part of the work that we've done at Azupay in developing what is a very unique experience in A2A is our hosted checkout experiences. So if you're booking a flight with Virgin, for example, you will see our UX in there. That's actually transportable into a retail environment. But to the first point, setting up an agreement in retail at the counter, that's a bit cumbersome. So it really comes down to how does a retailer going to engage with their customer first through loyalty, through app programs. If we think about, say, in the fast food environment, they've all got their apps today. I mean, even case in point, I just noticed this last week, I was buying some breakfast for my kids at Macca's, is the whole Monopoly thing at Macca's. Now you can only get the tokens inside the app. So they're pushing you to use the app, but that's how you would actually engage to get them to use PayTo or PayID in that QSR environment. But trying to do that mandate the first time while you're ordering a cheeseburger ain't going to happen.
That's the real silver bullet is getting that mandate to happen in a frictionless, non-clunky way.
Yeah.
Once that happens, you've broken the back of the proposition, I think, and then it's really about making it as scalable as possible.
And in terms of the infrastructure, so the PayTo infrastructure, is it just a matter then of building on top of what's already there? Are the rails there to enable that sort of experience already? Yeah.
The rails are there. There are solutions in market that can make it work. It's just bringing them to life.
Yeah, and I think, the capability's there because at the end of the day, it's an authorisation and a payment initiation. Everything else around the experience and the value add can be built on top of that. So it is about layering on top of that capabilities to build functionality that is going to add value to not only the consumer or the payer, and I think to the points made earlier, it's around how do you actually increase the awareness, the adoption at the right time. So with PayTo mandates and authorisations, again, you're not going to do it at the counter when someone just wants their burger and fries, but how do you incentivise them to do it whilst they're, scrolling around Monopoly or, discounts, loyalty programs, gamification, whatever it is. So that application, I think, can be used across multiple segments in terms of incentivising users to actually go in their own time, set up the PayTo agreements, and then allowing that frictionless, great experience, one click, no click checkout or purchase to happen.
There's also the other piece to think about is security and trust in payments is really important. And today, where people are so used to using their Apple phone or the Google phone and using those payment wallets, the biometrics captured, they trust that experience. And we look at, say, PayTo, having open mandate, they can just be transacted upon. That does create some elements of risk as well. And I think there's going to be a big shift in the industry and the thinking around it from AP Plus point of view as well. But being able to put inside that experience a level of security that makes sure that the person actually making the transaction on PayTo is the owner of the account or is the one that agreed to the mandate in the first place, that's really important. So putting in place, for example, Passkeys into the return journey of a PayTo experience, that's going to be critical to not only make the merchant feel safe about the transactions coming through, but also gives that reassurance to the consumer that they know it's a secure transaction.
Yeah, fantastic. And perhaps just talking a bit more about the experience from a bank side, PayTo was sort of heralded as the direct debit replacement, and it's obviously provides a lot a more rich sort of consumer control. Just interested in your thoughts, Deanna, about the rollout of that feature set for consumers across the banks.
Yeah, sure. And look, I think it's iterative, and the whole concept of control and transparency is a critical one, particularly given it is, you know, a new service. People are still becoming more aware and more confident in terms of the service itself. From a bank perspective, things like, you know, the ability to not only view your mandate in your banking app, but also to cancel, amend, suspend. Off the back of that, having real-time notification also being sent back to the merchant or, you know, the holder of that mandate is also critical in terms of creating that better customer or more rounded customer experience. So I think, you know, as a replacement to direct debit, it would probably be remiss of us as an industry just to see it like that. There is actually massive opportunity to create additional features and functionality to really enhance not only experience but also the security aspect to drive confidence and help with the adoption.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when PayID was first launched, as mentioned before, it was peer-to-peer. It was never conceptualised to be used for business payments or to be a dynamic piece in an airline ticketing process. But today, that's exactly what it is, and it's even mandated in so many banking tenders coming out from large corporates. PayTo, it was first released, it was meant to be a direct debit replacement, but we're seeing so many use cases outside of direct debit because it is real-time, it is secure, it adds a richer functionality, more detail, more messaging, more security, more options, although the piece around being able to control your mandate in your banking app, that's actually one of the reasons why it's got a slower adoption, because your gyms and your childcare centres and your charities don't want you to go and pause your mandate.
So do we see the turn-off of direct debit sort of as BEX comes to an end? Is that a part of the driver that might lead to greater PayTo take-up, or is it?
It will. It'll be merchant-driven. It'll be driven harder.
Okay, so perhaps if we could close it, we've got a few minutes left, but just interested thoughts from all of you about what it might take for bank payments to play a bigger role in the mix for Australia. So yeah, happy to start with you, Adam.
Oh, look, as I touched on before, I think there is a serious role for it to play in what we call the card-present space or retail, and that's anything from retail to hospitality, accommodation, etc. I think there's a large role, and I think what we'll probably see over the next couple of years is some significant enterprise retailers, the biggest of the big, will take on proof of concepts. They'll run POCs in stores. They'll test it. They'll try and break it. They'll, as to your point, Trent, they'll provide incentives for their consumers to adjust their behaviour to try and do it, and that will hopefully induce critical mass uptake amongst the community, amongst the consumers. If that were to happen, then I think those enterprise retailers stand to be the greatest beneficiaries of it, because they will save money on those transactions going forward into the future. But they've got to probably take the responsibility and the lead on introducing this into a retail perspective or a retail environment. So it's easier for them because they've got teams and resources to be able to do this, but the mid-market and the SME don't. So the big guys have to probably take a bit of a swing, and if they're successful, it will trickle down. Technology will play a part. Businesses like Linkley will help interface it or integrate it into the back-end systems of all the merchants throughout Australia. And then what you'll find is that it'll be a new way to pay, just like everything else that I mentioned at the start of this. It'll be just a normal way to pay, and everyone will benefit, but especially those enterprise retailers.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Adam. Trent, interested in your thoughts too?
I think adoption is very much chicken and egg. Who goes first, the consumer wanting it or the merchant providing it? And it was just like, reflect back on, I think it was 2007, I was first trying to sell NFC terminals to retailers, and that was an uphill battle because it was unknown who's going to use it, but eventually we got it across the marketplace and consumers loved it, adopted it, and we are I think, number one or number two country in the world for contactless transactions. It'll be the same with bank to bank or account-to-account payments. You know, we see that today in our conversations with merchants. They're like, oh, what's the adoption of PayTo? It's like, well, you got to have it to drive the adoption. We are seeing it pick up, and we've got some very large property management companies now live on our platform and using PayTo, and seeing daily uptake and more agreements coming through the pipeline. We've got major telcos that are coming onto PayTo in the next kind of 6 months or so as well. So seeing this will drive that traction in the market. Once the major retailers make it available, once the major telcos and utilities make PayTo available as a payment option, that will drive consumer awareness and adoption on that side, which will then in turn influence more merchants to take it on and put it on their checkout flows.
Yeah, interesting. And Deanna, your perspective on adoption?
Yeah, sure. So probably just echoing what Adam and Trent said earlier. Adoption does drive adoption, but unfortunately someone has to go first, so the chicken and egg. I think sort of taking a step back, education, awareness, you know, everyone probably in this room and you know, as a bank, it is really around making sure that we are helping educate consumers, merchants around that value, and the optionality of paying by bank account. The other thing also, and I was just having a conversation outside this room, and you know, part of it is, you know, going out there and using it, and you know, being part of that that adoption curve. And I can tell a bit of a story. I think I've got a bit of time. You know, way back in in the 2000s, I actually worked at a department store, and we had the click clack. I'm showing my age now. Machines for cards, and I remember at the end of the day, we would actually go through and reconcile. And at that stage, the click-clack machine transactions actually outperformed the touch or the contactless payments. But we've seen that was probably about 20 years ago. That has really changed and evolved, and the rapidness of the evolution of change in technologies is increasing. So what could take 20 years or did take 20 years now, I think we'll see in a few years. So really exciting times, and so much opportunity in terms of really utilising that capability to build out functionality, but in a sort of safe and confident way.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think you and I, Deanna, were on a panel on PayTo last Intersekt, and so a lot's happened in that time, so it'll be interesting to see in the year between now and next Intersekt what other developments and changes might happen. So thanks so much to all the panellists, really appreciate your insight.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
I was going to say one last point on PayByBank versus Pay by Card. Now that the major card schemes are trying to release their own account-to-account product, is proof that PayByBank's going to lead the way. They're threatened by it.
Another element to watch, yeah, for sure. Great, thanks, Trent.
Trent and I will take that one offline.
Thank you.